you see a guy in a beach shirt on a YouTube live stream giving you a deal tip, and it's in the middle of lockdown and you went along and bought it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Investing in property in the midst of a lockdown, yes, it can be done. I'm here today with Tim Earle, who has just done that, and he's going to talk a little bit about an exciting deal that he's picked up at auction in the middle of lockdown. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon. We put out new content each and every week, and it's all dedicated to helping you be a more successful property entrepreneur. Also, hit the like button. It really helps us out on YouTube. And comment. Tell us what you think about this deal case study story. Anyway, thanks, Tim, for joining us. How are you doing, Tim?
I'm really good. Really enjoying this time in lockdown.
And doing deals.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think it would be possible with everybody terrified about actually spending any money or doing anything with all the uncertainty. I wasn't sure that I'd actually be able to do anything during this time. But after watching a YouTube video last week, I think things all changed pretty quickly.
Yes, well, I mean, on another channel, I participate in this little YouTube live stream that we do where we review forthcoming auction lots. What I find in these sort of times is worth having a look at punt sites, which actually don't go for a lot of money. And I've seen sites like this go for considerably less than this. And they're worth a punt. So, Tim, you saw that clip and you thought, well, what did you see in that deal that gelled with you? I mean, did you notice that deal before you saw the live stream?
No. So to be fair, I'd flicked through the Savills and the auction and the Allsops auction catalogue, and that one completely missed me because it was right at the end of the catalogue, lot 40. And what stood out to me immediately is that was right up my street. On the side, I do commercial rent-to-rent, where I rent storage space to people who want to store cars and work on their cars. So seeing two dilapidated garages at the end of somebody's garden, it just ticked all of the boxes for me and just, got my excitement.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, of course, Tim and I know each other. Tim has done our commercial property weekend workshop, and he's also a member of my commercial property mastermind program. And let's just talk a little bit about that, because this site, it might not look attractive to many people, but I think a key thing is it actually fitted your current investment strategy. So let's just talk a little bit about that. So you do rent to rent, and these are, you take agricultural buildings from farmers.
Exactly. So I take agricultural buildings from farmers, and then these are buildings that are not fit for purpose anymore due to the changes in farming and the fact that the farm machinery has got a lot bigger. So there are many farms around the country that have exactly the same issues. So what I've done is basically, along with my, to support my hobby, I've, reached out to a farmer, managed to get hold of some units, and then I sublet the spaces in those units for other people who also want to, or who have the same passion as I do, to store vehicles.
So basically, it's sublet to people who don't have their own garage. It's basically like a serviced office, but for car buffs.
Exactly, it's like service garages, effectively.
Right.
Where people, they can come along, and it ends up becoming a community of people, like-minded people who want to store and work on their passions.
So this then fits in with something that we always talk about, which is when you buy a property that has some hope value, because obviously looking at this site, you hope to have some development at some point, but the baseline needs to be that it's profitable pretty much from day one. Now, this hasn't got it looks a bit dilapidated. You've been to see it. I guess it's pretty easy to put a roof on and put some garage doors on.
Exactly. So just looking at the plot initially, I could see immediately that, so what the pictures in the Savills website don't show you is that the property faces a block of flats, a block of housing. So I could see immediately that the moment that you simply put a roof onto the building and 2 garage doors, you then have got yourself back a functional 2 garages that you can then let out
Yes. Yeah.
or use for storage. So that's attractive storage to either people in the local area, the people opposite, because also this is a private road. So you might have some people who, they might want to store a car, want to store furniture, anything. It just gives an opportunity for anybody locally to then make use of that space and then generate some income off the back of that.
So you paid £46,000 for this. It's not going to cost much to bring that sort of back into life. You already have the operational infrastructure for letting out storage units. What sort of yield do you think it'll achieve?
So initially, if I go based on the assumption of approximately £25 to £26 a week for each of the garages, you're looking at about a 5% yield initially on that. But that's just on the space that takes up the garages. Mm-hmm. The reality is the plot is larger than just the garages.
Yes. So there's a possibility of renting out that yard space at the back, basically.
Exactly. I had some thoughts of stage one, the basic rent would be just to rent out each of the garages and then offer the possibility to, so if I put access holes, because the plot is actually 10 meters deep, so it extends at least another 4 meters behind the garage. Mm-hmm. I could subdivide the space behind the garage once I've partitioned off the garden that's already there, and between the garden and the garages, I'm left with a plot of land that I can then divide up so that each garage, if necessary, could have an additional space of land behind each garage for whatever. So additional storage or, just putting things, a workspace, and then you could then charge extra for that additional bit of land.
So, and of course, because of this is not a home yet, it's not habitable accommodation and all of that, we're not dealing with, your gross yield of 5% is pretty much your net yield. I mean, there's no maintenance, there's no boilers, exactly. There's no sort of running costs like that, but it's also outside of all tenancy deposit legislation and all the stuff that affects residential property. These are just commercial licenses that you use.
Exactly. Simple commercial licenses, and then for me the benefit of it is I can, if I left that money in the bank, the money would be doing nothing, and I know I can leave it sitting there and once the garages are functional, I can then have a period of time that I can just sit and wait and then make a decision as to what the future gain is on the land and garages.
So the key thing is, okay, bought it, get it operational, get it let as is, get it producing some money, and that allows you to pursue the uplift game, if you like, with the certainty that your money's working for you and it's doing something, and it brings no pressure to seeking that enhanced uplift. Exactly.
I mean, think nice to haves like potentially the land value might increase over time. If I get planning for whatever I choose to do with it in the future, which we can talk about in a minute, that's just going to add value, and I can then choose to either flip it back into an auction once I have the planning permission, or actually seek to get investor finance to actually do the necessary work to actually make the planning come to life.
Now, you're a regular at Baker Street Property Meet, and I know we had a fantastic speaker, Remy Connolly-Taylor, at a earlier meet, and she talked about developing small sites. I know you were inspired by that.
I was very inspired by that, yeah. So what was really nice about the development that she did, it's roughly the same footprint as this site.
Yes.
So the interesting thing for me is the calculations I did initially based on how the maximum that I think I could spend on this site were just based on the square footage that was available. But the reality is, if I can get planning permission for a larger dwelling on the site, it means that the total GDV then becomes higher. So my baseline is the base square footage that we've got, the footprint of the site, and my cherry on top is if I can get 2 floors, if I can double the residential area effectively, then my GDV goes up considerably.
So this is a very interesting business model, because you've got a business model that allows you to buy places which are not currently dwellings. You have an operating business that allows you to rent those out as storage spaces and produce an income from them, while you have the time to exploit getting planning permission for developing those sites into something that would uplift the value quite considerably.
Exactly. I mean, in an ideal world, it would be nice to know that this kind of site I could use permitted development on, but unfortunately I can't. So this, for me, at least I know that this site will be yielding while I can wait and do all of the necessary other things. And then you never know, over time, there might be a change in legislation which enables me to then do that development without needing to go through full planning. We don't know. I mean, if you look at the recent announcements by the Chancellor with regard to permitted development and adding floors onto buildings, that may or may not happen at some point soon. So these are, for me, exciting things about the future. But at the moment, I know I can just sit and wait.
No, I mean, Tim, I've had a look at this site, and I think you will get planning to build something on it. The thing is, just the process will take you a year to 18 months realistically, but you have cash flow in the interim, so you're not bothered.
Exactly.
That's really the key. Now, this was bought at auction, and while we're in lockdown, of course, auctions have completely changed. They've all gone online, and different auction houses are doing they're really doing the auction in a completely different way. So this was at Savills, but this was your first auction ever. You hadn't bought at auction sort of before. So what was that like, sitting in your pajamas at home, spending all this money on an auction lot?
I have to say it was one of the most nerve-wracking and sweaty palm experiences I've ever had. It was quite tough. So I logged in very early in the morning just to get a feel for any time delays in the auction, exactly how the process worked with the auctioneer. And I have to say, Savills did a very, very good job considering the situation we're in at the moment in making it as close. I have actually been to a real life auction before. Mm-hmm. I can say that sitting in your house isn't quite as exciting as being in the room and getting to see other people's faces. But I think Savills did a very good job. And I believe on my particular listing, there was 40 other bidders.
40 other bidders?
Yes. And I think one proxy bid where the person had proxy bidded £27,000. So what the auctioneer did was he knew that effectively, as the proxy bid had already come in, he just had to let the thing roll up to honour the proxy. And then after that, it would be in our hands.
Yes, I mean, some of these lots are hotly contested, but when they put in a guide, because the guide price on this one was £10,000, yes, and you will find that more than half of them would have bailed out at 20. Yeah. So, but the reason why you won it is essentially that you had costed it, not just on the GDV value, but on the plan to make it pay until you get that enhanced GDV. Because very few people would have had a plan apart from just leaving it empty while they wait for planning permission.
Yeah, no, I knew immediately, even going and seeing the site, I knew, because I knew you and the guys on the YouTube had some ideas about knocking whatever was there down and putting storage containers. And it's only going and visiting the site I realized, well, actually, I can make use of this. I can turn it back into something functional very quickly and then get it to start yielding. And yeah, for me, that was exciting, because if I can get it to start yielding, it means any money that I've got sitting around is being put to work. And as the years go on and the thing is paying itself off, my yield just gradually increases. It compounds over time.
So, of course, after we did that live stream, this lot, if you like, got a lot of public attention, and there was a lot of speculation online and people discussing what it might go for. And well, how did that influence your?
Tell you what, that put a lot of I could almost say there was stress in my mind, really, because you have a lot of self-doubt when you hear other people saying what they would and they wouldn't pay for something. When my calculations were based around the fact that I knew what I had in plan, the plans I had for the actual building, and the fact that I could get it to yield immediately. So then, yeah, I'm saying, well, have I made a mistake? But the reality is that because I knew what I knew that as long as I kept in line with what my maximum bid would be, in the end, everything would be fine. And even after the auction, people said that they wouldn't have paid what I paid for it. Well, I'm guessing they didn't have the same model that I do for what is my future plans for the building.
So that helped you. The fact that we featured it on YouTube and discussed it, and all the conversation was about what people would pay for it, but that assessment of what people would pay for it was based on not having a plan to make it yield immediately. Because you had that plan, you could outbid everybody.
Exactly. And I remember something that I heard you say a long time ago where, in the end, the person who wins the auction is the person who's prepared to be the highest bidder in the room.
Yes.
And for me, that was, I guess it was me, because I knew that I was prepared to pay a certain amount of money for it, because up until my maximum, it would do what I needed it to do.
Because ultimately, if you have a better plan than the next guy, then you can afford to pay more than the next guy and win at auction. That's ultimately it. What are your sort of learning points, I guess, from the experience of lockdown and making things happen?
So I think the biggest thing I've learned is be quite thorough when you're going through the auction catalogue to make sure you don't miss anything, and then try and get a solicitor on board as early as possible, even if you are sure or not sure about whether or not you're going to purchase the lot. You should try and get a solicitor on board as soon as possible so that they can go through the lots that you're thinking about and then see if there are any glaring issues with that lot. And I think the problem with this particular lot was, one, the video came out with you guys, so I saw the lot quite late. But then, interestingly, the actual auction pack for the lot didn't come out until days before the auction. Mm-hmm. So that left limited time for anybody to really get on top of the details and go through it with a fine-tooth comb to determine if there was any glaring reasons why not to buy it. I mean, one of the things that was a positive, I guess, is we had a look and it hadn't been in any other auctions before. Yes. Plus, the owners of the freehold had owned it for the last 30 years. So, there were a lot of positives there. So
let's just look at some sort of simple figures. We won't look at building out because that's a little bit... there are several variables that come into play there. But this is bought for £46,000, pretty much for £8,000 to £10,000 of planning and planning fees and architect fees and that kind of stuff. You can pretty much achieve planning permission to build some sort of dwelling on this site. Yeah. And that would probably see a uplift to a value of around about 150, 160,000 if you were to just sell it on without doing anything else.
Exactly. I think just looking at even without developing in it and just looking at what garages are being sold for, there's already an uplift just putting them back to being two garages.
Oh, really? What's it worth just as two garages?
So I think I've seen any prices from single garages being sold for around £80,000. So, wow. So even if I let both of them go for £80,000, I would still have made a bit of money just by putting it back to something functional.
So you're telling me you could spend a couple of weekends and, get some stuff from Wix on your roof rack, because all it needs is some joists and stuff and some plywood and felt roof and all of that and a couple of doors, and you could sell those things for 80 grand a piece?
Potentially, so looking around, there's some, depending on the area, but we're here South London, Catford, so it's a London area, so there's a good chance that yes, 80 grand a piece I could probably get for those, but I think the real benefit is going to be getting the planning uplift for that site, and at that point, potentially £150,000.
I think we've missed that point in our discussion. This has a huge advantage over a scrap of land, because this already has a structure on it, yes, which doesn't need much to finish off. And you can finish off this structure without asking anyone permission for anything. Whereas if it was a scrap of land, you would need permission to build this on it even.
Exactly.
So that makes it more valuable than just a scrap of land, I guess.
Well, this is what I was thinking. So when going to the site and thinking, oh, what would I need to knock down? But then seeing the fact that the carcass of a garage or a pair of garages were already there. So to me, that means that it was a hell of a lot of more value there than had it just been empty land or something significantly more dilapidated.
I mean, you said this wasn't permitted development, but in a way it is. It is permitted for you to develop this out into 2 garages.
Yeah.
The idea, the attraction of permitted development is always that you can get on and do stuff without someone else saying no, and it does allow you to do that.
Yeah.
Very clever, and it's great that you've done something sort of during lockdown. You've attended the commercial property weekend workshop. How was that for you? Was that how's that helped you?
That was really eye-opening, because I think with it's very easy to just look at residential as an option for things to do when getting into property. And I'd never considered that commercial was ever an option, and how accessible commercial was with things like permitted development. So
Yes.
the course was enlightening, and just the amount of people with similar interests that you meet on the day, just really very good. Or 2 days, sorry, very good.
Brilliant. So and Tim's on our sort of commercial property mastermind, and this should be the first of many interesting opportunities that we'll all be doing.
Fingers crossed for all of us.
Yes. Okay, Tim, thanks very much. I'll leave you to put a roof on this building now.
Yep, I put a roof, put some doors on, get the curb dropped, and then we're good to go.
Good to go. Brilliant. Okay. See you soon.
See you soon. Take care. Thanks, Ranjan.